Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cashflow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income producing real estate investments. And our guest for this week's show is real estate investment expert Jennings Smith. Now, Jennings started his real estate investment journey back in 2013 and has amassed a diversified portfolio of apartment complexes, self storage, and mobile home parks. Aside from running his investment firm, Live Oak Capital, Jennings also runs a successful coaching program and is the host of the Unlock Your Life podcast. And so, guys, with that, it's my honor to welcome Jennings to the show. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, Kevin, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah,
Doing great.
excited to have you here. Excited to pull back the curtain and learn a little bit more about you and your business, and just I guess the last almost now it's gonna be a decade, right, from when you first started buying real estate. And so love to talk about your journey there. But maybe let's back up a little bit. I'll give you a very brief introduction. Maybe take a few moments, Jennings, if you would, for those that aren't familiar with you and your story, and tell us a little bit more about you and again, really how you found your way into real estate.
Sure, yeah. I started as a contractor right out of school. I got my license actually while I was in school, building houses, spec homes, rental homes, doing renovations, and kind of felt like I was the king of the world when I graduated college in 2006. The economy was still pretty good in Charleston, SC, which is where I'm from. And I was making, six figures a year right out of college building houses. And then as we all know, the economy softened and I really started to feel it by like 2008, 9. It started to really just slow down, and we went from making money to losing money. I owed the IRS taxes from the year before. I owed money on my credit card bill. I still had all these employees, and I was literally working all day and then going to Home Depot and buying those little brass peep sights and going door to door and asking people if I could install them for $20, and I could install 4 or 5 of those and make an extra $100 a day. And that's how bad it was in the depths of the recession. I needed that to keep the lights on and keep on going. But that was kind of a crucible for me to say, you know what, like this is probably going to happen again. The world goes in cycles. I'm experiencing my first cycle here. This is going to happen again. But next time, I'm going to be ready, and I've got to start building passive income, cash flow, net worth, and assets outside of construction, because construction is very cyclical. And so that's when I decided, once I dug myself out of that hole, the economy improved, and I bought my first trailer. I bought a double wide, was the first real estate deal I did. And eventually kind of saw that if I wanted to scale and get a lot of cash flow, then I was going to have to move into something that just had more ease of scalability. My bankers were like, listen, you're never going to get 1,000 rental homes. Like, if you want to do that, you've got to go into multifamily. And that was the switch. And so it took me 5 years to get, 4 or 5 trailers and 2 rental houses. And then it took me 3 years to get 1,000 apartment units and 500 self-storage units, through syndication. I don't own all that 100%, of course, but between me and my cousin, my partner, we own about 50% of our portfolio through creative strategies and some seller financing stuff and stuff like that. So that really was the major shift. And I quit construction completely, sold the business, and focused totally on multifamily and commercial real estate.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Appreciate you sharing the story there. And just speaking to your days leading up to '08, were you working for like a large national builder, or it sounded like you were maybe doing your own thing because you had, a number of employees and things like that.
Yeah, when I turned 18, I started working for a construction company, just a small mom and pop builder. And while I was doing that, I got my builder's license for myself. Then I decided to go to college. I went to Clemson, and in the summers I would build. And then when I graduated, I had a couple spec homes that I had built. My dad was a realtor. He would sell them. And then I moved into custom homes. So yes, I had my own company, which is nice, but all the bills come to you and all the responsibility and employees and everything else. So
Yep. No, good deal. Okay. No, I appreciate that. And So let's talk about your focus today. We mentioned mobile home parks, we mentioned multifamily properties, and also self storage. Where is the primary emphasis of Live Oak Capital? Where do you guys spend most of your time, and which one of those niches?
So the main bulk of the portfolio is C class, workforce housing, value add stuff. I mean, I like things in that 30,000 to 70,000 a unit range. Most of my stuff is anywhere from $600 a month to $1,200 a month. And then, we do own two self storage facilities, and uh, those are, I'm partners in those. I raised capital for them. I got them closed, but I don't really operate them. So I'm not like a self storage expert. I mean, I know a little
Mhm.
bit about it, but my expertise is more in the multifamily. And then mobile home parks, I owned two. I've sold both of them, made a great profit on both deals, but that is just there was a lot of maintenance, and it's very heavy lift to do that. I think you can find deals easier and you can do that value add component, but I got to the point where I just didn't want to work that hard. I mean, the mobile home parks are a lot of work on the management side.
It sounds like maybe was it a mobile home park where you owned all the units? Was that the type
One
of
of
structure?
them, yes, was
Yeah.
that. The other one was a infill deal. So we bought it. It was about half full, and we had to move in like 20 homes.
Hmm.
Now doing that, we bought that deal for 200 grand, and we put about $150,000 for the homes in there, and also all in for 350, and we sold it for 750. So we did great value add. But finding that many homes and setting them up and placing them and then selling them owner finance or putting renters in it just was it's just a lot more intensive than
Hmm.
multifamily, and thereby not as scalable, right? So I'm always looking for something that I can repeat without a ton of effort on my side.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's maybe compare, a mobile home park, one where you own, one of those that you mentioned, you owned all the units there. So I mean, it was a horizontal apartment complex, for lack of a better term.
Right.
What do you think the big difference of that on a day to day from an operation standpoint? What do you think the difference of that type of mobile home park and a C class apartment complex is? Just I guess I would as far as a lack of scalability of going deep into that model. I know some guys. So what? They just to disclose here, like we don't own a lot of the homes. Like we own mobile home parks in 13 states, and that's been our business for 10 years. But in a perfect world, I wouldn't own any homes. I'd rather just rent the dirt, right? Like that
Yeah.
is the business model I like. But it's not a perfect world. So we do own, I don't know what the portfolio today is. We probably own somewhere between 250 and 300 homes, like throughout various parks. But I know some guys that go all in and they literally love the rental model of mobile home parks. And so they kind of double down on that. And so I guess I'm from your perspective, because we've run some that way, but it's been a long time since I've run a C class apartment complex. What are the big differences in your eyes of those two? Because in my eyes, they're very similar. It's a very similar demographic you're serving. It's workforce housing. People have challenged credit. They don't have perfect credit. They're working one and two jobs to pay the bills. Again, very similar demographics. So would love to hear from your perspective some of the big differences.
Yeah. My thought was a lot of the C class stuff that we buy that with a large construction loan as part of our package deal. So we're going to the bank
Mhm.
and maybe a $4 million purchase price plus $1 million renovation. We're borrowing 75% of that. And so we're coming in there with a war chest. Like we can come in and replace the roofs, redo the parking lots, you know, renovate every unit with LVP, repaint, new cabinets, counters, whatever for 10,000 a unit. And then we have a pretty durable product. Worse, like the mobile homes, it just seemed as though like every time we turned around, the HVAC was breaking. There's holes in the floor. People are kicking, cabinetry in because it's made out of particle board. I mean, it's just, even though like the C class, like the quality of the construction of a 1960s, 70s apartment versus a 1980s trailer is night and day. I mean, so I think that, yeah, if you're going to
Mhm.
go down the mobile home road, the best is own the dirt and sell the stuff, owner finance, so that they're maintaining it. And that's how I started with mobile home parks. I mean, the first deals I ever did were just mobile homes, and I didn't own the park. I just owned the home because that's all I could afford. And I would sell those, owner finance. So it was like $2,000 down, 700 a month for 6 years, and you owned it. And so that model worked really well for me. It was passive, and I could make great cash flow on it. My issue was finding deals that worked in my local market and
Scaling,
then
you're getting some
renovating them.
scale.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that model is good for someone that maybe they have a job they absolutely love, like have a W-2 they absolutely love, and they're just looking for a side hustle, something to create an additional retirement income stream for them. And I think that's when, like, maybe buying one or two deals like that a year and just doing that every year for the next 15-20 years, or buying one rental a year, the slow steady method. And I think that works for a certain type of person, right? Again, maybe it's someone that loves their W-2 job, they want to carry that job through retirement, and don't want to change anything up outside of that. And then you've got guys like us that ultimately see this as more of a business, and in order to to build a sustainable business, you've got to do it at a certain scale. And so no right or wrong. And I always joke and say there's 1,000,001 different ways to make money in real estate. And so we're speaking to a few of those here today. And again, I know some folks that do really well just buying individual mobile homes. It's just really hard to build a big business out of it. So talk to me about the markets that you guys spend your most time in. What is it? Is it you guys mostly in the South, Southeast? Where do you own your properties?
So the first dirt deal I ever did was 5 hours away. So I'm in South Carolina, and the deal was in North Carolina, and it was a small town of 5,000 people, Williamston, North Carolina. And it was a good deal though. It was 12 units for 250 grand. And so I found a great manager in that location, and it was kind of trial by fire of doing something remotely, because I think most people, when they get into multifamily, they've got a rental home background, maybe they own a few, and they're always just thinking, I've got to buy in my backyard. Well, the Charleston market is it's expensive, and Tampa. I mean, a lot of areas are just, it's really hard to make the numbers make sense. And so um I bought there, and then my next couple deals I bought in the surrounding Charleston market. I was able to find some stuff in Monk's Corner, which is 30 miles outside of Charleston, Columbia, Lexington, and then Georgia. But I really, after buying 400 or 500 units in my market, I couldn't find anything else, and so we looked elsewhere, and I bought in Oklahoma. And that was scary because that was the first one that's like, I mean, that's a half the country away from me. It was a big deal. It's 208 units, and it was very heavy value add. Like, it was half empty. It needed a $2 million renovation, and big deal. But it turned out to be probably our best deal, our most profitable deal, because we bought it for 5.5 million, put 2 million into it, refinanced it, and we got like 9.5 million cash out. It appraised for 14 million. We put non-recourse debt on it. We did that this past summer, so just in time before things really started getting haywire.
Let's talk about haywire real quick.
Yeah.
Let's talk about haywire. And are you guys are you in the middle of any projects right now where you've got floating debt in place, or where you don't have a rate cap, or you got a balloon that's coming due in near term?
Well, this past December, so like 12 months ago, I'm looking over our portfolio, and I'm seeing two loans that we have, two deals. And I really wasn't freaking out about the rates yet because that hadn't started to come, but I'm looking at, wow, I'm in short-term debt, 2-year bridge loans. I'm in floating rate. There's a lot of, fees, and we're behind on our renovation schedules, and these loans are going to eat me alive. And I've got to get rid of these properties. I've got to get them stabilized, and I got to sell them. Our model typically is buy it, stabilize it, renovate or refinance it, and hold it. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall with these two deals, and we really started aggressively moving towards getting them, 80, 90% full and getting them sold. And And that was really smart in hindsight that I did that, because those were our only two loans that we had that were floating rate, that were very, very short term. And one we were able to do really well. We sold it at a $950,000 profit. The other one we barely broke even. We made, I think, $60,000 on a $6 million deal. So
Oh, wow.
I did a whole podcast on all the mistakes we made and what happened with that. And some of it was mistakes, some of it was just, things conspiring against us with the economy and where we were going. But yeah, I moved with intention to get those off my plate. And in our mentoring group, I'm preaching like time is all real estate good deals are good deals if you have enough time. And it's where people get pressured into making bad deals is because they're running out of time. And so at this point, everything we have now is it's either like with local banks, 5-6 years, or it's with Freddie or Fannie with a 10-12 year loan. Except for one deal we have, and it's under contract. It's closing in February. And we have an extension. We have two 1-year extensions on that loan. So I don't love it, right? Because the bank can always say, yeah, we'll give you an extension at our discretion, and our discretion is no, or our discretion is now your rate's 9% or 9.5% or whatever. But that property is like 87% full. We've brought the rent roll from 55,000 to 80,000 a month, so it's definitely in better condition than when we bought it. But that's our last kind of our 2-year maturity is this March, and we need to either get that extension done or get it sold. So right now we're working on getting the extension, plus it's under contract. So that's our last kind of loose end to tie up with this cycle.
Got it. Are you finding, and this is more, putting the acquisition hat on, are you finding that seller expectations have readjusted a little bit? I mean, as far as pricing is concerned, given the change in the capital markets?
Not really. I mean, I think it should. And the numbers don't lie. We can't pay as much given the debt rates, but I think that sellers are stubborn. And I look at myself, right? I've sold 3 properties this year, and I'm stubborn. I'm seeing in my head like what I was getting, and we have been able to get good prices on our stuff even still with the markets rising. And I think that we're not heading for the cliff that we were in 2009, 10. I think that a lot of people are not going to be forced into sales. There definitely are going to be some, right? They took big loans. They took them on bridge debt. They're coming due. However, they owe a lot of money. They can't really slash those prices too far. So I think we still are maybe a year out. If the Fed continues to raise rates or doesn't give any relief in 2023, like they say they're going to do, I think that the only way you're going to get a really good deal is taking it off the bank's hands. Because I think a lot of these syndicators, they're so far leveraged with the banks and with the money that they've taken in, they're not going to just let them go. So I don't see, I think I'm going to stick to my strategy, which is buy for cash flow, buy the C class stuff, keep my metrics in place. Like I'm following like the 1% rule. I'm trying to get 1.25 to 1.5%. It's not easy to do, but if I stick with that, that's how I had options to sell my properties that I needed to sell, is because I bought them cheap. I bought them right. And if I keep sticking with that, I'm going to be fine in 2023, and I'm going to keep buying. And I bought 2 properties in this past year as well. So
how, what are how are you finding opportunities? Like, what's kind of the method of your madness to, identify and then ultimately, get deals that can make it into your acquisition funnel, at least to get underwritten initially to determine whether or not it fits your model? I mean, what does that look like? What efforts do you guys put forth? Is it simply broker relationships? Do you have other creative strategies that you utilize?
Yeah. When you first start, I think the best is work those broker relationships, do some cold calling in your market. You see a place boarded up, whatever. We've all heard these strategies, but very quickly, what I saw is it's not who I know. It's who knows me. And if I can build a fire big enough where more and more and more people know what I'm doing, opportunities are going to flow to me.
Mm-hmm.
So what I decided to do about 2 years ago was build a Facebook group. Just like you decided to start a podcast and start telling people what you're doing. And that Facebook group, grew from a few hundred people to 25,000 people in there. And that led into my mentoring group. And so a lot of my deal flow comes from my social outreach. And so we put out a lot of videos, we do the podcast, we were very active in the Facebook group. And I would say the last 4 deals I closed came from those direct, like from the Facebook group, from people bringing me deals and wanting to partner with me. So I know everyone doesn't want to do that, but everyone can tell people what they're doing. Like, hey, I buy apartments. This is what I'm looking for. And consistently putting that out there, you're going to attract those opportunities to you. And I think that's a lot more effective than trying to find the needle in the haystack. I mean,
Yeah.
you should do both, but yeah, that's how I found my opportunities.
Got it. No, that's great. I appreciate that. And, coming from a construction background, are you at all involved in the actual other than overseeing the asset management and directing? Are you involved at all in the actual construction renovation projects within these communities? Like, do you have your own crews that go in, or do you hire that out?
No. So I got completely burned out on construction. And I was like, about 4 years ago, I sold my company and I never wanted to pick up a hammer again. I didn't want to meet with another client about a budget meeting or argue with subcontractor for not showing up. So yeah, we hired independent contractors. And most of the time our property manager, so we had one property manager that they had a contractor in-house, and they did a lot of it. That led to some conflict of interest stuff down the road, but our other property managers, they would hire the vendors, vet them out. We would approve the bids, and then they would get a fee for managing it. And that worked out really well.
Got it. And how about property management? I mean, you outsource it, obviously. Is there ever a plan to bring that in house? And if so, at what scale does one need to be at in order to justify?
I think you should, if you want to do that, if you like doing that. And my cousin and I, my business partner, Yaden, we started a property management company as our first venture together. And we had about 100 homes, or maybe 60 homes, and like a couple little apartment complexes, 10 units, 12 units. And I recognized that the money was not in that. And all the focus spent on that and building systems and processes was just wasted. Like I learned how to do property management, which was smart, but I didn't want to do it as my business. My business is finding deals and finding money and putting them together. And then, so the first piece we outsourced was that property manager. And we found property managers that they were better than we were. And now, as our portfolio has grown to where it is now, we've actually hired a third-party asset management company who eats, sleeps, breathes asset management and spreadsheets and data and how to interpret the data. And they're now riding herd over the property managers, holding them accountable. And we meet with the asset managers once a week. And that has been really, really interesting. We're about 6 months in with this asset management firm. And they've been pushing, we hired them about a half the portfolio, and they've been pushing our profitability up steadily. So that's been really fun. I think I'm going to take them on the rest of the portfolio too.
So help me understand that. So there's a third party asset manager that ultimately kind of fulfills that role within the organization, correct?
Exactly. So,
okay.
I mean, I'm the asset manager, and I've essentially hired them as a vendor to help me asset manage. And so they're pushing our marketing. They're making sure that our SEO is tuned up. They're doing the market analysis of the rental rates and bumping the rents $5 here, $10 there per week. They're looking at the vacancy. They're making sure that the managers are keeping the delinquencies low, that the work orders aren't stacking up, like all this stuff that as a high level, big idea, entrepreneur kind of guy, you don't do so well on those kind of details a lot of times. I don't. And I saw that my portfolio was struggling, and these promises that I've made to my investors, my partners, it was our performance was subpar. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm not going to say I'm the best operator out there. And I think that a lot of multifamily guys, they're really good at finding deals, they're really good at raising money and getting stuff across the finish line, but the money is made in the operations. And if you're not a great operator, then that's going to show up. And we see that, especially with a lot of guru types. It's like they have that charismatic appeal, but when the rubber meets the road, they're not great operators. And so I'm thinking, man, if I cannot be not a great operator, so if I'm not that good at it, I've got to find somebody that is, who, not how, that can help me to keep on track of this stuff, so that I can focus on what I'm best at.
Yeah, no, that's great. Honestly, excuse my ignorance, but I didn't realize that service even existed. So that which is funny, but
What?
because
I didn't either.
we've always had it in house. We've always had a dedicated person on the team that ultimately, acts in that capacity as an asset manager. And so, but I never. It makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, and I guess it probably could come underneath a few different labels as well as far as how it's marketed. But again, I just never really thought about outsourcing that. But that could be very beneficial for a lot of folks that are listening in, that are maybe just getting started, right? That don't have that expertise, that have that entrepreneurial brain, and they're good at finding deals, finding money, but don't necessarily have the best operational expertise, and they don't have the budget available to actually bring that in house yet. Maybe it's something down the road, because that's it's a pricey position to have a really good asset manager in house, right? It's it comes with the price tag, but it could be much more effective to outsource that until you get to that necessary scale. So no, that's great. Would you mind sharing? Is it a large consulting? I mean, is it a big group that you can share the name of, or is it just an individual that you've got a relationship with?
So I had never thought of it before, as well, and I'll get to your question in a second.
Yeah.
But my friend, I'm in a business group with him, and he has about 3,000 units. And this guy is always going to Cancun, and he's going on vacation, and he's got plenty of money, and he's got a much bigger portfolio than I do. And I'm here like pulling my hair out trying to manage my portfolio. And I'm asking him, dude, how are you doing this? He's like, oh, well, I have an asset manager. I hired this top level person, and she manages the property managers and reports to me once a month, and keeps it on track. And that's how I'm doing it. And that's what planted the seed of like, oh, I don't necessarily have to be this asset manager. So I went to a conference maybe 6 months later, and there was a group there that was one of the sponsors of the conference, and they did this service, and they also did in property management services. And so the company is called Liberty Capital Consulting, and so I asked them if they would do this a la carte asset management for me, and I was their first client as far as just doing it a la carte, because they typically do both. They train other property managers on how to do multifamily asset management, or they'll do the property management and the asset management for you. If you live in their area, they're based out of like North Dakota or something. And so they came on as consultants, and they helped me uncover some issues I was having with one property manager that was managing about half the portfolio. And through a process, we replaced that manager with a different management company, and it's gone really, really well. At least in the last 3 months since we got the new manager on, and everything's clicking along smoothly.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's good to know. Guys, I'll put that in the show notes as well. And then, switching gears here, Jennings, there's a question I always like to ask before we wrap up the show. It's a fun one, and hopefully you can go back in your archive of all the deals you've been involved in. And, there's always that one deal, throughout your investment journey that either you lost a lot of sleep over, created a lot of undue stress in your life, gave you extra gray hairs, whatever. It's just it had more barriers than usual. Tell me about the deal that comes to mind when I say all that. What were the challenges associated with it, and ultimately what was the outcome?
Gotcha. So If you want to hear about my Clemson deal, that gave me a lot of gray hairs, but you can check out the podcast. Just search for like $6.1 million deal, like worst deal I ever did. It'll pop up. But I would say barriers. I think this will be a more useful story. This was the first large syndication deal that I did. So we had closed a 12 unit and a 18 unit, but we were trying to close a 64 unit, and it was about a $5 million deal. So bigger for me at the time. And we needed to raise 1.2 million in cash from investors. So our loan sponsor had told us, yeah, look, we'll help you get the loan, but we're not putting any money in, or we'll put 100,000 in, but we're not really putting the million two down. So my cousin and I, we hadn't really raised much money at this point, and we raised each maybe 100,000. So we had 200,000 raised, and someone in my network came to me and said, look, and I can raise the million for you. Give me 10% of the deal and I'll raise the $1 million for you. No problem. I'm like, awesome. That's great. Done. Who, not how. I don't have to raise the money. I don't really know how to raise money. This is great. So we're going through due diligence. We put earnest money down, and we're maybe 3 weeks out from closing. And I am not hearing much feedback from this guy who's promised me the $1 million. And as the deadline's approaching, I'm asking him, and finally he comes clean and is like, listen, guys, like my investor base is mostly single family. They're not loving this deal, and I can't raise. I mean, I've got like 200,000 raised. That's it out of $1 million. So,
oh boy,
we're now 3 weeks away from closing. We've got $400,000 raised, and we're $800K short. And so that was a very scary time. And I think that if you're going to do this, something like that's going to happen to you, where the rubber meets the road, and you have the metal in your backbone to get it done, or you bury your head in the sand and say, this doesn't work and it's too hard and I quit. And I think that a lot of people, they don't push through that. But if you push through that, it builds so much confidence, and you're going to be able to close deal after deal after deal after deal. Just getting that first deal done typically is really, really hard. And so we just said, all right, well, whatever it takes, we got to do this. So I went through my emails, I went through my Facebook friends, I went through Instagram, all my text message, all my phone contacts, and I just wrote down everybody that I possibly thought would have like 50 grand, and just started calling, hey, I got a deal. I got something that you might want to look at, and just reaching out. And little by little by little, we got like the last 50 grand in, I think 3 days before closing. And we got the deal done, and we ended up taking it full cycle, getting it fully renovated, getting it refinanced, putting it into, Fannie Mae non-recourse debt, getting the money back out to all the investors, and doing a Burr, model deal on this apartment. And it's a great deal. We were all in for 5, and I think it appraised for like 8. So it was a great deal.
So what lessons learned? Biggest lessons learned?
Lessons learned is you gotta get good at the hard things. I was shirking back from, well, I don't want to raise money. That's too uncomfortable. And yet that's one of the most highly compensated roles. I mean, if you're in a syndication or you're in a partnership and you're like, I can bring money to the table, everybody wants you on their team. And so I think that I see that in my coaching, where people are happy to be like, I can do the underwriting, I can do the boots on the ground, I can manage contractors. But when it comes to like, I'm going to cold call brokers, I'm going to find off-market deals, I'm going to call investors, I'm going to raise money. That's what people don't want to do, but that's what gets compensated the most. And that's the most valuable player on that team. So those are the things that if you want to be successful, you got to get really, really good at. And then secondly is every single deal since then, as soon as we put it under contract, we're all raising money like there's no tomorrow. Every single partner is raising like they're trying to raise the whole thing themselves until it's done and overfunded by a couple of shares. And so that was another lesson learned. And the next couple of deals, I mean, we were filling them up because we understood like you can't take the most critical part and give it to somebody. Like I want the ball, right? Like Michael Jordan. It's like when there's 5 seconds on the clock, like I want the ball, and everybody's got to have that mentality.
Yep. I agree. It's there's some things that you just can't outsource, and as far as you got to keep the accountability hat on, and fundraising is one of them, because ultimately nothing happens if you don't have the money to do it. The deal doesn't get done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Jennings, it's been a lot of fun having you here, my friend. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and just some of the insights that you've learned over the years. And for those that want to learn more about you and the different things that you have going on, including, I know you got a big Facebook group and you've got your own podcast. Where's the best place to track you down and learn more?
I mean, it's all in one spot. Jennings Smith JR. So JenningsSmithJr.com. It has my Facebook group. And if you jump in there, we'll give you a pitch deck on how we raise money. We'll give you our deal calculator. We'll give you a couple other tools to get you started on doing this yourself. And you can also look at our podcast and our coaching group if you're really wanting to get serious about it.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Jennings, appreciate you coming here, my friend. It's been a lot of fun having you.
Yeah, Kevin, appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care.